Well, for more on Auto China and the latest trends in the global automotive industry, we're joined by Lauren Fix, live from Buffalo, New York. She's an automotive expert and editor-in-chief of Car Coach Reports. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back.
So as we've seen, this is the first major auto event since the pandemic began. We know that the Beijing show was rescheduled from April. Talk about the safety measures, the lessons learned from other in-person events, and how they really plan to make this a positive overall experience for attendees.
Well, this is very big because remember the top 5 shows, which include Geneva and Detroit and Los Angeles, which has been postponed. Beijing is the only one that we know right now that is for sure going to happen. And this is really important because this is a huge market. So they're going to be doing temperature checks, and they're also going to have an app where they ask you questions online. You need to have that special app in order to access this. So they're going to have a lot of controls on social distancing and making sure that everyone wears a mask, because obviously we don't want to spread the virus.
Indeed. So what do we know about the car makers who are planning to attend, and what kind of presentation should we expect?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot less of the concept cars and more of the new energy vehicles. That's what China calls it. They call this the China Auto Show. It's very, very important to their country. They have increased sales right now, and they need to educate consumers on electric vehicles. And this is part of what you're going to see from every manufacturer. Toyota is going to be there, Honda, Volkswagen, General Motors, and Ford are all going to be bringing out electric vehicles. In addition, you're going to see a lot of micro SUVs. Now, we've seen the compact, small SUVs. They're going to be a lot smaller, so think more Mini Cooper sized. And this is important because of the cost of these vehicles, the licensing that's required in China, and then on top of that, there may be times where you can purchase a vehicle that's even less expensive that wouldn't have all the safety features for those people who wish to take that risk.
And as you mentioned, the theme for this year is actually the smart vehicle for the future. So talk about China's effort to lead the way on this front and the sort of trends that you're seeing in innovation.
We're seeing a lot of interesting trends. Now, we all know about electric vehicles and being mandated in some countries and even some states here in the U.S. But one of the things I noticed in China, and I've been monitoring this quite closely, is the electric grid cannot support every single driver having an electric vehicle. So one of the alternatives that China has invested in heavily, billions of dollars, is a product called blue gas. So think of it as compressed natural gas, or CNG, but it has a hydrogen component to it. And this is totally good for the environment. It will have 0 emissions. It will be a very little carbon footprint, much like a battery. But this is a great solution, and the largest gas station in the world right now is in Shanghai.
It certainly makes sense to see this now, this new innovation. So then as we look at other global major auto events, what's the outlook for them? Obviously, they're all managing COVID safety restrictions very differently.
Well, this has been very interesting. I monitor this because I used to be the president, or I'm past president of the North American Car, Truck, and Utility Vehicle of the Year Award. So we were quite tied in closely with all the auto shows. So because we lost Detroit and New York, Los Angeles was the only holdout, and they now have postponed their show until spring. But that puts it on top of the Chicago show, which basically means the Chicago show won't have as much presence anymore. It may reduce itself to a local show that would be good for local dealers, but not good on a national basis. But also Detroit saw this all happening at once. And so they moved their show to September. So everybody seems to be shifting the dates so they're not on top of each other, because obviously we want to have those presentations of new technology, concept cars, and some of the new vehicles that we're seeing. And some of them are done virtually. So we're seeing a lot of virtual reveals. I'm literally doing 2 to 3 a day on a global basis. So it's quite a bit of content.
Now, how is this all trickling down in terms of consumer interest? We saw that China's car sales grew at their fastest pace in August in more than 2 years. What about other countries? Is there a consumer pace keeping the same?
Consumer pace has increased in the U.S. We have a shortage of vehicles. It was partly a supply issue, but they're starting to catch up for the 2021 model year. But you're noticing that same thing happening in Europe. Vehicles are starting to catch up because the used car market got so strong because of the lack of new vehicles available that consumers wanted specific trim levels. So they turned to certified pre-owned cars, which are vehicles that have been driven for 2 or 3 years and traded in off a lease. So that made that really go up in value, about 10 to 15%. So now what we're going to see is the model years for 2021. We should have full production run by the end of the year. This is good for the entire world. There's a lot of pent-up demand. A lot of people have been sitting, and interest rates are low. And so this is a good incentive for consumers who need new vehicles to get them. And not necessarily electric vehicles. Here in the U.S., we're about 2%. even though some states are trying to mandate it, consumers just aren't there yet. And I think it's the time to charge up, how long it takes to wait, and of course the distance until it needs a recharge.